Live from the Technology Studios in rural Pickens, South Carolina. It is Tuesday, April 23rd, 2013. I'm Matthew T.G.
I am Keith Mulligan.
I'm Steve Stanley.
And I'm Tony Casey. Welcome to the Technology Show, weekly podcast featuring technology, theology, and everything in between.
And we mean
this
everything.
is episode 200.
Woo! Way to blow the gain out of the microphones, everyone.
Hey,
We're doing
and
good.
in the house, Steve
Hey.
Stanley.
Where?
Yeah.
Right there.
Who was here at the very beginning with our very first podcast.
And
Do we
still
have a
it
clip?
survived.
Yeah.
Do we have a clip from our first show?
You know
Lord-
what I'm afraid of? You know what I didn't check before the show started? Heath, we pulled out the extra mic today, and I think the switch is not on.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe it is.
It is on.
Okay,
It
all right.
is
Get
on.
up close to that thing. There you go. There you go.
Hello.
There you go. All right.
Oh,
Oh,
Now
man.
it's good.
Whispering.
You have to eke. You're
Well, you
used to
know,
that microphone
I'm
over there.
letting Steve use the...
The golden EIB.
yeah. I noticed Rush Limbaugh's whiskers. I saw that.
You know, you and I, Matthew and I were talking last week that on the very first episode, we talked about Space Bat.
Oh, yeah.
There was that crazy story of, what was it? The shuttle?
There's the last, or either the last or the next to the last launch of the space shuttle, and a bat
Yeah, the
landed
bat-
and flew to space.
Yeah, the bat was clinging to
Oh,
it.
yeah. I remember that.
So instead of choosing to believe that it got incinerated, out there, we just believe that it went off into space. All right, so today our format's radically different.
Yeah.
We are celebrating our 200th episode. We started 4 years ago, March 2009. We started just as a Skype-only podcast.
Yeah. We used to all three, Steve, myself, and you, Tony. We were all located in different towns, and I would fire up Skype. We'd do a conference call, and we all would be in different rooms. It was crazy.
And then you guys removed the restraining order, and I could be where you were. So.
Yeah. Then it was really a move on my part to South Carolina that kind of brought us all to the same room.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't remember, you guys, Tony, you emailed me or called me, and I came
Get
on.
into your mic there. You have
Sorry,
to remember this
came
episode.
as, sorry, yeah, I'm used, yeah. So I came on as the youth ministry correspondent and was just like on once, and then I started doing once a month, and then...
Yeah, you moved to South Carolina.
August of 2010, and I remember we were down interviewing. And I said, if I take this church and I move down here, and Tony's like, "You're in. You're in. We want you here every week." I'm like, "Yes."
Well, what was crazy is after we had you, you were at Denton,
Yeah, I was in
at
Denton.
the time.
Yep, Denton, North Carolina.
And we had you on as a guest, and when the show was over, we said, "Wow,
All of
it
us said,
was just fun
Yeah.
having him on the show."
It was. Yeah, when we all talked about it ahead of time. Well, it would be nice, wouldn't it, if Heath could be on the show
Join
every
us all
week.
the time. Yeah,
You guys met my contractual demands, and the rest is history.
yeah, yeah. Bottled water,
Yeah.
one bottle of water for every.
Tony told
every
us it was
episode.
that visit the IRS paid to you.
Our first few episodes were rough and tumble. There's no question.
No.
Yes,
They were awesome. Go back and listen to those.
No, please.
No,
don't.
they were awesome.
Do not go back and listen to them. Please don't.
At that time, we'd not so much as heard whether there was a Holy Ghost. Still baptizing in John's baptism.
This all started. Matthew had put me on to a couple of tech blog podcasts that he thought that I would like, and one was actually Buzz Out Loud, which was a daily tech show. The tech news run about 40 minutes each day, and so I would download it and probably listen to it 3 or 4 times a week when I was jogging. And one day, I'm down here jogging, and it hits me. Well, why can't we do this?
Yeah.
We have the internet
We
technology.
have the technology. And we can rebuild it.
And so I called Matthew, and he said, "What are you thinking? What are you thinking?" And so I kind of told him. He said, "Yeah, I'm in." And Matthew, Matthew is the guy who makes the show happen. He is the producer, and we could never do what we do.
There have been a
without
couple
him.
episodes where you have done. One where I was at kids camp. That was a great memory. Early in the morning, in a counselor meeting, getting pulled aside. Tony's on the phone. He doesn't know how to get the show set up.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I would run the show, it's like a monkey who had been trained what buttons to push. And there came a time when we jumped the shark where I couldn't push the buttons anymore. And
Yeah.
so if Matthew's gone,
Yeah,
we
we
don't do the show.
And we used to have to literally set up and tear down everything.
Yeah.
Every
Wow.
week.
You know
and
that
then,
I've
yeah.
forgotten how much an impact it made to move to this room, which we haven't been here long in
September.
terms of the the bigger show lifetime, but this has really made a difference to have a place to be. Yeah.
After I called TG and he said he was willing, and I called Steve and kind of told him my idea, what we were thinking about doing, and Steve signed on. We couldn't have done it without Steve, and I still miss Steve from the show, but we
Yeah.
understand. He's like our
That
resident.
sounds almost sincere. You're getting very good at
The
that.
Bishop of Greenville.
The Bishop of Greenville, yeah. And so, we have been asked before. We were at Southern Wesleyan University at a communications class, and the question was asked, why do we do this?
Yeah.
Because, we do it at a level of sacrifice. And yet the reason we do it is the idea is to resource people, that there are a lot of things out there that people in ministry just don't know exist.
Yeah.
And my conviction that we weren't taking the technologies that were available to us and then resourcing people. So that's one reason why we do what we do. Another is that the integration of technologies. And so you have these technologies that we have. What does it mean to faith? So there are times that we cover stories where we now have the technology to do things, but ought we to do what we're doing with technologies?
Right.
Yeah. Our very first episode, we talked about Nadia Suleiman, the Octomom.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was on the agenda.
Oh
We
man.
not talk about her again.
Let's try to refrain.
Well, it serves as an example of we have the ability to do stuff like this, but who's asking the question, should we be doing stuff like this?
yeah.
And our show is designed to just
Another reason it's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not
Yeah.
take
A lot
it,
of fun.
even though
Yeah.
it is a lot of work. I mean, let's not act like it's not a lot of work. It is. I mean, you talk about the work you invest in booking guests and making all that happen. It's a lot of work, but man, is it fun! And the
We have a
kind of
good time.
people you get to talk to,
Yeah.
the
Right.
kind of people that we're able to get access to, is amazing. We've had some pretty great things.
We have.
You think about how the format of the show has changed. We just kind of would grab stories that were kind of. It was basically they said it. Expanded out for the whole show. I mean, that's pretty much what we did. And then we reached this point where we realized it might be interesting to change formats, to compact that down into a segment of the show rather than the whole thing, and try to work to get people who are doing some pretty cool things. Do you remember? I mean, I think we'd pulled guests in before, but when we got, it was Todd Burpo, and then later it was Mark Batterson.
Yeah.
Those were the two
those
big.
are two big gets.
Yeah, for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mark Batterson in particular, just that. I mean, we kind of figured we could get Burpo if we tried a little. Being a Wesleyan pastor, we
Yeah.
kind of figured that. But when we went after Batterson and started pursuing that, do you remember that excitement when all of a sudden we were like, "Yeah, he's going to be on the show."
I remember texting to say, okay, he's in with Batterson.
Yeah.
And
Well, here's
whoa!
Well, here's the thing. This is what was great, because for me, this is when the show really started picking up momentum, and that was at the gathering.
It was.
in 2011,
And that was you two
And
going out and getting interviews.
And dude, it was like, I remember when it's announced Mark Batterson's going to be at the gathering, and then we get there and we're like, man, it would be great. We know we're going to try to interview people, and man, it would be great to interview Mark Batterson. And then we realize, great planning by the committee, that every speaker and author that's there is going to do a book signing. So you're like, we're going to be able to get
and all that
a
happened. We weren't planning that. Like, it's
Nope.
amazing how at the gathering, all of a sudden, we were like, "Wait a minute, we can do this. Wait a minute, we
And
got
it's
to
like-
wait a minute."
like, we're front of the line to meet Batterson.
Yeah.
And it's like, he was just a personal hero of mine, and we were like, do you have 5 minutes? And like, he was
He
there
was
signing for a
awesome.
while,
He
and
was
he's like,
awesome.
and I said, well, here's what we're going to ask you, and he's like, let's just go, do it live. And I'm like, yes.
Yeah,
But
he
you
was
guys,
kind
the
to
two
us.
of you have to be credited with that, because I didn't envision that, and it did take the show in a whole new direction.
It really did. That was almost like the
It was.
like the
It
defining
was the
moment,
watershed
wasn't it?
moment. And then what we learned is, people have said to us, well, how did you get so-and-so on the show? How did
Yeah.
this person come on? And our answer is always, we asked.
Yeah.
It's amazing, the people you can get to come on if you just ask.
Yeah,
And now
again,
what's
it's work,
cool
but
is we'll have somebody on, and they'll tell somebody, oh, you should be on this show.
Right.
Like
Right.
that's been really cool.
We had one guest on this past December, Nina Rosner, and Nina has used the interview that she did with us. She just points people to it.
To
Yeah.
promote
Yeah.
her book. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Yeah, and that all that came about. We didn't actually actively pursue her. That came through the publicist who
Thomas
was like,
Nelson.
we kind of want to
Yeah,
talk about this book.
We were working with, I think that was for Rachel Held Evans,
Yeah,
who
that's
was
how-
a big, great interview for the show.
Her
with
publicist,
new book.
yeah.
And I was like, she was on the Techology show, and then the next day she was on the Today Show. So I thought that was kind of.
Here's what was cool. What happened with Rachel Held Evans' publicist is, if you're on the theological spectrum at all in the evangelical church, you understand that Rachel is over more on the left side of that. And so Jason said, hey, do you want to kind of counterbalance that? We have someone else that's more towards the right. And
Yeah.
that was Nina Rosner. And we
Yeah.
said, sure, let's do that. And so, with Thomas Nelson, it's turned out to be a great working relationship.
Absolutely.
And Jason's moved on, but he's with another company, and he's
Yeah.
already contacted
Yeah.
me, and he keeps me, hey, how about this one? The last one, we said, no, we don't think he fits the format, but still.
Yeah.
So we've made some really cool connections.
One thing that, doing the gathering kind of gave us this idea for General Conference last year. And, as people are talking about the show in the chat room today, they're all talking about how General Conference just was like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, probably for me, the most surreal moment of the entire show was at General Conference. You're like, hey, Earl Wilson watched your broadcast last night. And I was like, Earl Wilson.
who's he?
General Superintendent.
Just kidding.
Like,
I'm just kidding.
well, I'm just saying
We
for
don't know
people
who
are
this
watching,
is that's wandered in
Earl
the studio.
Wilson, General Superintendent for over 20 years in the Wesley Church. General Superintendent Emeritus
Yeah.
with health complications, was unable to attend General Conference for the first time ever. And it was just like, we're doing that was just
It was
awesome, man.
Here's what's crazy. Here's what this show started out being. It was simply bringing Steve and Matthew together, and so our topics were conversations I was having with him
Yep.
and conversations I was having with Steve. And usually with Matthew, most of those were tech related or how tech and faith intersected.
Yeah.
With Steve, a lot of times theological, apologetic conversations. And things that were happening in the culture where we said, wow, I don't think that culture is thinking this through in terms of what is this going to look like a generation, 2 generations down the road.
And I think that was more significant even than the kind and caliber of interviewees you were getting, was the fact that we recognize, being pastors, that there's a loneliness that comes on you, and there's a lack of camaraderie and a group to sit down with and discuss the current burning issues of the day.
Right.
And we hoped to be that for these people, opening the chat room as Matthew T.G. did, and making that available to the listeners. At some point, I know that there have been dreams and discussions of having a live talk show. It would just take more horsepower than we have right now. But at least we were able to present the issue, give a couple different views on it, discuss some implications that might come from it, and hopefully further the conversation among our colleagues.
This kind of, when it started, it was the digital form of what we were doing on the district with the book club.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It was a replication of that.
Yeah, we would have this book club where we would read one book a month.
And
but
argue.
and all kinds of subjects would come in and have the time of our lives. I mean, really, I have had pastors who come back and wanted me to start that up again. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you tell them Tuesdays at noon.
There you go.
Now, the saddest moment for me on the show was when we found out from the FCC that we could no longer be user antagonistic. That was a sad.
Oh, come on. That was something that we needed
We
to go a long
decided,
time
yeah,
ago.
we decided-
when we put out stuff to our guests who didn't know what the Techology Show, saying the user antagonistic podcast probably wasn't the best way to bill ourselves.
Well, what I like
was it?
about that is that you still are user antagonistic. You just don't warn people.
That's right.
What's,
It was stealth. It's a stealth approach.
One
now.
of the things that I'm really hoping for, and kind of, I know this day will come when you can Google Techology or the Techology Show, and Google doesn't ask you, did you mean technology? Like, I want to get to that point. Like, I know where Google knows exactly what I'm talking about.
We've got a ways to go. Now there are some. I pulled a couple of highlights that
Yeah,
I
I
really
actually
liked.
pulled one too that I just remembered too.
Oh,
So
did ya?
I did just a minute ago, so I'm ready to go. We got some good ones.
Well, go ahead. Let me see what you got. What you pulled.
So when
we
we
go.
started
This
talking
could be
about the
crazy.
gathering and how we just all of a sudden we're like, oh my goodness, what cool stuff? Do you know what I'm gonna do here? Yeah, okay. There was this one. Like, I'm not that great. I love the technical aspect in putting this together, but sometimes I don't get everything right. And there was a moment we had one interview where Heath stepped onto the Mount of Transfiguration while the interview happened. So here it is.
All right,
Here
let's
it
see
is.
it.
Here it is. Sorry, you're gonna get the whole thing here.
It's fine. Thanks to Cody Thomas, by the way. That was a game changer.
Oh, yeah.
for us. Hey, it's Heath Mulligan again with the Techology Show. I'm here with Dr. Brenda Salter McNeil, who just gave a rousing message.
And this is the only
this morning
interview
to our entire denomination.
I'm
And,
speechless.
we were talking
Yeah.
earlier. When
This
I was in
answer
high
just
school,
is
I
so
went to a
powerful.
lot of pep rallies.
But I just didn't
He
have
looks
my
like the ghost of Christmas past.
I just didn't
Dr.
have my
McNeil
camera
is,
set up right,
how do
and it
we
seems to
take
get worse as
this-
it goes
this
on too. Yeah.
motivation and this rally today, and when we get home to our churches,
I miss
All
that
right.
old yellow mic, that yellow.
I had a ball.
I see people in the background
She
taking their
looks
shoes
good.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everything's metered on
Well,
her.
I had my camera set up to automatically meter, and so it was metered on Brenda, and it wasn't on Heath. Look at him.
the ghost of Christmas past, right there. Just like Dickens described.
I was a little pale that day.
All right, so
Go
one
ahead,
of the
go.
ones that I pulled, Steve and I had to be away, and so it's just Heath and it's just Matthew in studio,
Oh, my.
and it's I call it the greatest giveaway ever in the history of the Techology Show.
Yeah.
Here it is.
And I don't think I talked about this one last time, but this is a new addition. We have a package of milkweed seeds. So you can
We're giving out weed on the show. What are we
so you can grow your own butterfly plant, okay? And help the monarchs there. There it is, milkweed seeds. We have.
Listen,
Look at that bunker we were in.
I know it. Couple of things there. First, I just can't thank my wife enough. Sherry is so supportive of this show, and she isn't just supportive of it in that we do it, but she actually comes in here and cleans this studio. She listens to all of our podcasts, and so when I talked to her about our 200th episode today, she goes back to the milkweed seed. This is one of her funniest, her favorite episodes. She goes, "Man, those guys, when you're out, Tony, they're just doing wild things."
I believe Steven won those milkweed seeds, and I think he's in the chat room. He
And
wasn't
he's
going to be, but
complaining that he still hasn't got
Yes,
out of
he
the mail.
has.
So here we go. So Steven, so we're talking about Steven.
All
She's-
right.
First,
Yeah, Steven and his
let's
mom.
give Steven just
Yes.
big props. He helped us at the
yeah,
gathering.
and that was another
Oh
big
my.
bump
or
for
general
us.
conference.
Yes, I meant general.
That was another
conference.
big bump for us. Because you weren't able to be actively involved as a delegate. Steve,
Unreliable.
same, yeah, same sort of deal. So we pulled in Steven to just kind of be our third person, and just a stellar
was
job.
awesome.
We were talking about it before the show started today.
Right.
Like when you need to get something done quick and put stuff together
is
and
the
make it happen.
man.
He did just tremendous.
And so one of my favorite clips, I didn't even know this was on my computer. So I give Matthew my computer during the gathering. He could do some editing and stuff on. And so I'm just cleaning out stuff, and I find this, and it's just a great Steven Sheets moment.
Yeah.
It is. Here we go.
Hey, we should still archive the announcement.
What just happened?
I don't know.
Yes.
Are we all frozen up?
Yes,
We
it's
are.
frozen.
Cool. What a
no.
day for everything to die. And I tell you, it wouldn't be.
Well, it's just our 200th show.
So did we lose internet?
No, we're good. Just hang tight with
They
me,
can hear us
everybody.
out there?
Oh yeah. You just can't see us. We're all a frozen mass of all the days for everything.
The
to freeze
rapture
up
has
and quiet.
happened.
Live on the Techology Show.
And we're all still here.
Oh
Your
no,
first time
no,
before.
no.
Oh
Is
man.
Steven still in the chat room? He's still with us? Frozen from
What a day! I mean, what a day!
What a
See,
bummer.
this is.
This brings me back to like our early episodes.
Oh yeah, you better believe it. Hey, all right, let's try it again. Let's see if we can get it. Here we go.
All right.
We're
Hey, we should still
What?
archive the announcement about.
It's something to do with that video, isn't it?
It might be.
I'm gonna
All
blame
right.
Boinks TV.
Well, I'll come back to
Bummer.
it after a little bit. Oh,
There it goes.
what in the world?
We don't know what's happening.
What in the world? That's all right. I'll try to come back.
Okay,
to it. Give me
so
a second.
what we're gonna do. The reason we brought Steve in today is because we're gonna do an exorcism because we have had some issues on this computer. It's the Hackintosh here.
Yeah.
Oh, let's talk about that too for a
Yeah.
second. How we used to run this. It used to be run off first a white plastic MacBook back in the day when it was just Skype.
That's right.
Then an iMac, and it was still kind of Skype. Then when I moved down here, then we kind of we would set up one camera or something like that as the shot of the room. Then you got your iMac, which was a quad core. It had enough to where we could set up cameras, but we were taxing it. If you saw in that milkweed clip how jerky everything was, we couldn't pull the right amount of frames.
That episode is running off of your 24-inch.
Oh, really?
iMac. Yes, it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I
Okay.
I noticed that today.
Okay. Well, it had a hard time, because of the USB buses. So it came to the point where I built a Hackintosh. That changed everything too. We switched to 720p cameras. I actually have in my hands. We are going to be testing after we're done today this new camera, which might let us do a little bit better.
We're hoping.
than that. Yeah. Wow. What a dramatic change though that was. I was actually thinking, what do you guys think? I might write an article about the equipment that we use to put this together with links to all the
With
different
Amazon
things.
links.
There you go. Amazon affiliate links
There you go.
to all the equipment that goes into making this happen. Let me try the Steven clip again one more time. Let's
All
just
right.
see if it works because it is good. We need to see this.
I love this.
Hey, we should still archive the announcement about Dave Drury.
Yeah,
yes.
even though he's not here, and
Yeah.
it was such a great moment between him and his dad.
We had a there was.
I know, it kills me. But basically,
I got teared
he's
up.
taking a position with
As the chief
of staff.
chief of staff.
Wait, I thought
for
for
Joanne.
chef.
No,
Staff.
no,
No,
chief.
chief.
I
Okay.
spelled it wrong earlier. The chief of staff for Joanne Lyon, Dr. Joanne Lyon, the new general superintendent for the Wesleyan Church.
David
He
Drury,
is
yes.
her right hand man.
DavidDrury.com tells the story of that, and the technologyshow.com/giveaway is where you've got
couple hours, like 15 minutes.
maybe an
Yeah,
hour.
you gotta get them up. Gotta get that up quick.
Wait, look at that watch. You got this long. You got this long to get it up.
I'm going to enter right now.
All right, that's it. That's it. Bye.
I love that, Stephen and Matthew. I mean, no one from the opposite side of the
You
camera,
can't
the
tell.
viewer would have never known that Stephen didn't have a watch on.
Yeah.
And the way TG looks down is, oh wait a minute, what time is it there? What a watch!
I think that was like one of those little rope watches. It's one rope past another. Something. Yeah, it was.
Oh,
TG's your truth detector.
yeah.
That's right.
So, I mean, I've been pretty liberal here with some of my memories and things. I don't know if you guys have anything else or something that sticks out to you. Maybe someone in the chat room, a moment
that's
or
cool,
something.
too.
I think,
there.
I
I
think
like
one of
that.
the most poignant moments for me was when you were able to contact a missionary in Japan right after the earthquake.
Oh, yeah.
and the tsunami. And we were among the first
2 missionaries, yeah.
Christian agencies in the United States to make a contact like that
Yeah.
and have it live. And we heard instantly how the Christians were acting Christianly all across the country and responding. And I think that it prompted giving on the part of our people. We put up links on how they could help support in that. That was one of the highlights for me.
Yeah, this gets back to the beauty of the technologies that in the old way of doing things, things are put off. So they're put off for a few days or a few weeks. It's going to take a while. But with the internet, I mean, it's now. You can, if they have an internet connection, you can do it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's been, just to see the show grow. I mean, a lot of people think, well, 200 episodes, that's not a big deal.
Oh, my.
I mean, just by, in comparison, there's a guy that I follow named Cliff Ravenscraft, and his podcast is Podcast Answer Man. It's a podcast about podcasting. I mean, in all the world, I mean, he's recognized as an expert on podcasting. Well, he's recorded a lot of different shows, but that show is only at 300 episodes. I mean, there's so many podcasts 10, 20, 30, and like 200. Like that's pretty.
When we
pretty
had
cool.
when we had Claire Diaz Ortiz on from Twitter, she was like episode 170 something.
Yeah.
And first thing she said, she understands the world of podcasting and she knows that we're a weekly show. First thing she said to us in the pre-show was, "Wow, way to go, guys!" I mean, she understood.
Yeah.
That's a long run, and there is now, as you said, Matthew, it's fun to do, but there is a lot of work that goes in behind the
There is.
scenes. I mean, hours that Matthew does with the technical stuff, and then Heath and I are setting up, interviews, contacting people, stuff like that. All right, so we promised some of you that I was going to play a game.
Here we go.
Yes. All right, I got to get this set up. So you got. Oh man, I should have known it was coming. Give me a second here.
Yeah, all right,
You talk
well-
about something else, and we'll
Well,
get.
let's
to-
just
get
talk
to
about
that.
Donkey Kong. So, like, I missed the whole thing. So, what's the whole Donkey Kong era?
Well, Donkey Kong was just, as far as arcade games go, it was one of the, it along with Pac-Man,
Okay.
kind of revolutionized
Gaming?
arcade gaming. TG's got this set up with the original Nintendo. What's cool is what he's doing, and what was a game changer for the show was a program called Boinks TV, which allows us to have all the different
Oh, yeah.
cameras, and,
Yeah.
and that has been a huge thing. And if you're watching today and you're thinking, well, I could never do a podcast.
You're
like,
right.
here
You
doesn't-
couldn't. Just stay tuned to our show.
Now, what's cool is I'm pretty excited because I got some things coming up where I'm hoping to launch another show, but do it here. We're going to be the Techology Network. So, yeah.
Oh man,
Have you told?
We're in.
going wrong today. I'm trying to do.
the producers having trouble.
Yeah.
They may not get to see Tony Casey do Donkey Kong
I-
live.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that would be so awful.
But, a lot of people, Donkey Kong was the first game featuring Mario. And so Mario, that's Nintendo's bread and butter now. And maybe Donkey Kong, was it the first Nintendo game? Pac-Man was Camco.
What's crazy is that Nintendo came out with these things, but people. So what I remember is Pac-Man. I don't remember Donkey Kong.
Right.
But I remember going to school with guys who would go to. We had a place called Shakey's Pizza.
Yeah.
They would plunk quarters in that
Oh,
thing
yeah.
all night long
And
playing
that's
Pac-Man.
That's one of the reasons I love the movie Wreck-It Ralph, is it really harkens back to that arcade era where kids are coming up putting a quarter on the game, calling once they started taking tokens instead of quarters, it was the fall of Western civilization.
I'm just amazed that you guys have been able to vamp about Donkey Kong.
I
for
feel like
this
the
long.
guy. Did you see the episode of?
We'll
Parks
come back
and
to
Rec?
it. We'll come back to Donkey Kong. I'll keep working on it. But go ahead. Let's move on to something else because
Well-
it's not happening soon.
Well, the next thing what we want to do is and we've told you our memories and kind of how the show got going, and we're just gonna jump into stories, man.
Okay. So they said it.
I love that sound.
The
Yeah?
universal sound of the computer shutting down.
Yeah, they said it.
Read my lips.
I'm going to say this again.
I've never taken steroids or HGH.
I took the initiative in creating the internet.
The Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard.
I am not a crook.
I'm not a crook.
If you know what you're doing here,
Slide
out.
There are images and details of this story that I am never going to be able to wash out of my mind. KYW reporter Walt Hunter, speaking of abortionist Kermit Gosnell, who is charged with killing a female patient and 7 babies. His clinic has been described as a house of horrors. Source, Channel 3, KWY, Philadelphia.
I think the country is suffering from a glut of overdiagnosis and overmedication. Dr. Alan Francis, a professor emeritus at Duke University, an outspoken critic of DSM-5.
The fight doesn't end with same-sex marriage. We need to legalize polygamy, too. Gillian Keenan in 2011 speaking for the legalization of polygamy in Canada. The Canadian courts would eventually rule to uphold current statutes outlawing polygamy. Source, The Washington Times.
Most people in our recent debate over the future of Windows 8 thought that the operating system could be saved. I'm sure many people in 1491 thought that the Earth was.
Wait. That music with that story. The death of Windows. Go ahead. Go finish it.
Most people in our recent debate about the future of Windows 8 thought that the operating system could be saved. I'm sure many people in 1491 thought that the Earth was flat too. Stephen J. Vaughan Nicholas predicting an end to Microsoft Windows, source ZDNet.
All right.
All right. So before you get to the stories,
All right.
before you get to the stories, here we go.
Here we go.
So I just start playing here. Oh my word. Oh my word. There comes the barrel.
I gotta get it up here.
Go up the ladder.
I'm going up the ladder, man.
Left.
What do I go? What if
Up
what if
the
a
ladder.
fireball comes at me?
Oh, you gotta jump
Good
over.
job.
Whoa!
Keep going. Yeah.
No, barrel.
Jump.
Ah!
All right, Heath.
What?
Heath feels like he can take him on. He tried earlier. Here we go.
How many lives do I have? I tell you, Mario sure is a slow.
I don't hear the music.
Sorry.
Yeah, I can't play it without the music. My timing.
Yeah, here at the Techology Show, we are right on the cutting edge of
Nice.
the things that are important.
Nice.
Look at him. Look at him.
Come on, Heath.
I
Get
have
there.
never
Come on, Heath.
saved the woman.
Come on, Heath.
Oh dear.
Don't hit that
What?
barrel.
What day? What time?
Yes.
Go, Heath.
He's almost there, ladies and
right.
gentlemen. He's almost there.
Whoa.
Yes. Oh!
What happened? What happened?
He just got her. Now it's on to level 2.
What in the world are you doing? Yeah, you try level 2.
All right, Tony, there you go. Level 2, go.
Where am I? I don't even know where I am.
You're here in the studio, Tony. What you guys put in this drink?
If you've never seen.
So what do I do with this umbrella? Help
Pick
me.
it up. I don't know.
umbrella.
I've never gotten this far.
Yeah, 800 points.
What happened to me?
You died.
Okay.
All right. Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
So have you ever heard of Donkey Kong before
Well,
today?
I've heard of it, but I mean, that's never,
If you haven't watched
never played
Fistful
it.
of Quarters, King of Kong on Netflix, it is a it is a must.
Well, that was
watch.
a disaster.
Now here's the question, TG: is Windows 8 going the way of Donkey Kong?
No comment.
No comment.
Well, we saw yesterday they're bringing back the start button.
They bring it.
Is
Well,
that
actually,
a sign of the end?
Actually, Mary Jo Foley broke the story last Thursday or Wednesday that her sources told her that they were bringing back the start button, and Paul Thurrott has confirmed that. So yeah, there's not a lot of mystery behind it now. If you've never used Windows 8, you have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, but it'll drive you crazy that the start button's not there.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're bringing that back. I think that this article here, I just don't buy it that Windows is dead. They're pronouncing the death. If anyone's worked in the business world, go to your bank. See what operating system they're running.
This is true.
Be in education. See what operating system they're running. And I'm not just talking about Microsoft Office package. I'm talking about the utilities that run these programs. If you looked at Microsoft's earnings over the last quarter, they were good. Microsoft is a company. They're always hovering around $30 a share. They're always paying their investors dividends. Apple, which is up around $400 a share, has paid one dividend payout, and that was post Steve Jobs. Jobs never paid dividends, and so Microsoft's not going anywhere. I mean, I just don't buy it.
Okay.
That's what they said about BlackBerry.
It's on the story, as the story said here. There were those who thought the world was
you
flat.
see,
too.
this is a perfect example of his political skills, because later, if Windows dies, he can say, "Well, I said it wasn't going anywhere."
Well, it may
if it
die.
succeeds, he'll say,
I'm not saying it's not going to die, but it's not anytime
it's
soon.
an ambiguous statement.
Yeah,
there. I mean,
not anytime soon. All right, so let's jump all the way to the top here. This is a story that I think for a lot of believers, they're familiar with it. It's the Kermit Gosnell story. This was an abortion clinic in Philadelphia. Just egregious, absolutely egregious what was happening there. Fetuses that were literally being delivered alive, and he would kill them, to be honest about it. The state has complaints going back all the way to 1992, and it is only in 2012 that finally the clinic is investigated. 20 years after the first complaints were filed, 2 decades.
Well, there's some sort of. I was reading about this last night. There's some. I don't know what it's called. It's like an abortion provider organization, and they went in, inspected his clinic, and would not allow him into. Like, they were so appalled by what they saw, didn't allow him into their organization. But then no one has reported him to anything. It's like everybody would admit, like, you know, Planned Parenthood's been in there and they've all seen the atrocities going on, but no one reported him to the authorities. And it is absolutely unbelievable. And then the second thing is that no one's covering this story.
Yeah.
Didn't Kirsten Powers with USA Today, didn't she kind of break this story in the media? I think.
I don't know who broke it originally.
I think
you could
I
be
think
right.
so.
Yeah.
I think I heard about it this morning. I was actually listening to something else that was referring to this, and they were talking about kind of. Yeah, I think it was USA Today.
Well, there was last week huge criticism that the 3 major networks would not cover the story.
Yeah.
On the heels of that criticism, CBS finally did, and their morning show covered it and warned their listeners.
Yeah.
And part of the, here we're going to get political, but part of what is believed by some is that you have the mainstream press, which is pro-abortion or pro-choice, I should say, for that's their words. They're pro-choice, and that this is a story that they just want to avoid like the plague.
Right.
Well, testimony's been given. I was reading about it last night that they flushed babies down the toilet.
Yeah,
one
babies
living baby was seen to do something like swimming, trying to fight for the top, so it could breathe. Finally, the plumbing became clogged. They had to take the toilet up and remove the bodies of dead babies. It's been called a house of horrors. I don't even think that.
Well, if you read the article that we linked to, there are other things that are just so disturbing.
But and if you think about, he's on trial right now. If you think about the amount of time typically that takes place between an arrest and a trial date, and yet this story was not even covered, and then till the trial is days, weeks old.
Right.
Another thing that came out, and this has to do with abortion, was the Florida testimony where they're talking about what if a baby's born alive at a clinic, and the Planned Parenthood rep says, well, if a baby's born alive, that decision should be left between the patient and the doctor.
Right.
And kudos to the representative, the Florida rep, who said, well, isn't the baby your patient now?
Yeah.
Right.
And
it's
quite
just,
an exchange.
There is this, and this lady, like, to see this worldview that just cannot say, well, this
live baby is not recognized as a patient.
Right.
Like
you, and she can't. They say, well, isn't that baby the patient? Well, I'm not a doctor. I can't. Like what?
The story that we link you with here, it's interesting because you'll see a clip from Walt Hunter. So he's 70 years old. He's worked at this TV station. He's covered Philadelphia news for a number of years. I don't even know. He talks about in his whole career one of the most disturbing things, and he said the scenes and the things that I know and the things that I saw covering this story, he said, I'll never be able to wash from my mind. And so this isn't some young buck reporter, 70 years old. This is if you will, a warhorse. This is a guy who's done this for years, and he has never seen anything like it. All right. So the next story, it's interesting. I had to kind of read and get a feel for, understanding the language and stuff like this. I forgot to tell you the source of the story. It's The Verge, and it's in the field of psychiatry, psychology, and there is a manual that psychologists and psychiatrists always go to. It's called the Bible for psychology. It's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and the 5th edition is coming out, and it is coming under heavy criticism. And you heard it in this one quote from a psychiatrist connected with Duke University, and his biggest thing is that they're over-medicating, they're over-diagnosing things, and the things that we've talked about on the show before. I mean, we have wondered out loud about perhaps the overdiagnosis of HDD and things of this nature.
ADD.
Yeah, what
HDD. That's the next level of television that's going to be coming out
there
this
are-
Christmas.
there
my
are-
dyslexia that just
There,
led to that.
no, no,
I need
there,
medication.
there are a lot of people suffering from Heath deficit disorder. It is a epidemic.
That's why we provide the technology.
That's right.
there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys have any, reaction to this story. I thought it was a interesting story, good story. Also thought it was interesting that The Verge is covering it.
I, as someone who suffers from undiagnosed,
HDD.
yeah, from
Heath deficit
HDD and all sorts of things, I wonder how different my life would be if I were growing up now. Because if I were growing up now, by kindergarten or first grade, I would have been diagnosed, more than likely medicated, and now I've talked to parents who have had children with ADHD, and they've been medicated, and it has been a life change. They just talk about how it's life changing, that just make their life so much easier.
Yeah.
And I
think
don't
you know,
know.
what we are not saying here is we are not saying that it isn't real.
Right.
Or that there isn't a place. I think
Right.
sometimes in a child's case, sometimes medication is a substitute for poor parenting.
Sometimes.
Throw
In
that
some
out
cases-
there. Yeah, in some cases.
We have
I'm not
also-
saying in all cases
Right.
by any means,
I
because
mean,
I've also seen the opposite side of this.
Right.
I
was just gonna
you
say,
spend any
without-
time working with kids,
Yeah.
like I mean, kids camps and stuff like that. Like I've gotten to do. Yeah, you're gonna see. There's some cases where you know, all right, you're getting this medicine because your parents don't.
Well,
aren't-
there's also studies that show that are critical of the diet of the children, which is high in high energy type things, sugars, and
Yes.
so forth. And combined with that, putting them into a school environment where they're told to sit there and be quiet.
Yeah.
At the very time that their bodies are beginning to produce hormones that want to do anything
Yeah,
but sit there
yeah,
and be quiet.
yeah.
I wonder if we don't need to reimagine and rethink the whole education
Oh,
Yes.
wow. You know,
especially now, I know
Kudos
it's going
to
to sound
you.
like a gender biased
Yeah.
statement, but especially for little boys, because
Yeah.
it hits them harder, it seems. And that's not just my judgment, that's the result of several studies that are out there.
Yeah.
This is what Dobson says in his book, Bringing Up Boys, and he's not doing original studies. He's not authoring studies. He
Right.
simply goes to studies that are already published to say it seems that these studies only back up. And he says that our educational system works against boys.
We have forced an artificial culture, if you
Yes.
will,
Oh, good
on the biological structure of the body, and I don't think it fits well.
Well, also, too, you and I have talked about, and I'm looking to you to inform me a little bit here, but go back into Roman culture and how, part of education was tying yourself to a mentor where you were traveling, you were moving, you were doing things. And yes, there would be these times of instruction, but part of the whole classroom was life itself.
Right.
In the Jewish communities now, in the book Sitting at the Feet of Rabbi Jesus, the author goes into this where you tied yourself to your teacher, you lived with your teacher, and it wasn't set down in a cubicle. I've got information.
Much more relational,
Yeah.
much more activity-based and activity-oriented. Even if the activity was just conversation, there was back and forth.
Yeah.
And we've gotten away from that. We've gotten to where we put them in front of a computer terminal, and they can play games, but there's nothing for their body to burn off the excess hormones or energy that they have.
Yeah, I think in the church, we have got to be, there's a very fine line between real issues that really do require medication and just people not having enough faith that they need to rely on the Lord more, and it's more of a spiritual issue than a physical issue. And to me, what has proven that out, and I've seen it in life after life after life, is people go through things, whether real things, and they get all the medication for it, and nothing changes. It often makes it worse, and I'm like, well, it's because you've got this spiritual issue in your life. You've got this thing you won't repent of. You've got this thing you won't let go of. And as long as that's going on,
this is something we've been dealing with throughout the entirety of Christian history. As you look at it, you got we sometimes forget that there are two realms.
Yeah.
There's a physical realm. There's a spiritual realm. Sometimes we try or we act and live as though there's only the physical. That's heresy. Sometimes, and Christian history points this out too, sometimes we act like all that's important is the spiritual things. That's heresy.
Yep.
There's times for both, and it is tough to walk through that, knowing, okay, where are we dealing with something physical? Where are we dealing with something spiritual? Where are these things intersecting with one another? Because I do believe that there are. I mean, I feel like I've seen where spiritual things can have a physical impact, and how do we, and vice versa. I mean, you see somebody who's going through a physical thing, and it affects their spirit. It's a crazy thing.
It's all intertwined.
But we get into the problem when we just treat it's just that, or try to put a definitive answer. When the reality is we're not Gnostics. God created flesh. He created the physical universe. It's not evil. It's there. It's for us to.
Dr. Francis, I think, also puts his finger on something. So there's a bigger criticism out there with medication and pharmaceuticals in general. So you can find other people. There are other voices who are saying, just at large in our culture, we over-medicate. So we can take this out of the area of mental illness and just talk about any number of things.
Right.
So we are in a country where we talk about methamphetamine addiction and stuff like that, which is legal drugs.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of people who are addicted to legal prescriptions.
Yeah.
And they're and let's be honest, many of them are sitting in the pew, filling our churches, and
And I don't think, if you allow me to introduce a third category, I don't think that they necessarily are always medicated because of either a physical or a spiritual issue, although those are two of the largest contributing factors. I think there's a societal dimension too. We are more disconnected. We are smothered in information.
Yeah.
And starved for meaning. In other words, we've got all the data, but we don't know what it means or where it points, and mainly that's because education today is divorced from theology. Theology used to be the prince of the arts.
How much is a lack of being plugged into community as well? I mean,
well, I do think when I say societal, that's the element to which I'm appealing, and then I'm trying to diagnose why it is that the society might be that way. And I just think that we don't have God as the background, the canvas to all that we're doing, and so we're hanging colors out here on nothing.
Yeah.
In essence.
Wow.
And there's no meaning behind it because there's no ultimate meaning. We innately pick up on that, even if following the rationalist theories of the evolutionists, we don't get there. We innately feel that if we're just the product of time plus chance, then we're an accident.
Yeah.
And thank God we're an accident that got here, but that doesn't give us any direction for our life, and it doesn't point to any purpose.
Yeah.
No structure
that
holds it together.
So deprive us of that.
Yeah.
When we were created for just the opposite.
Right.
And what are you going to do to them? I mean, it's like taking your car down to the lake and running off the boat ramp and saying, well, hey, we're going great. Well, you will for about 20 or 50 feet, and then things won't go so great because you're going against the design of the vehicle.
So part of this is trying to fill that void, the structure that we're denying.
Good. Excellent. That's why
so
we miss you.
That's why we miss you from the technology.
Well, I just gave you my testimony. What's happened to me.
All right, the last story here. I do want to get to this one. So this is an old story, a 2011 story. And Steve, you put me onto this last week. And there are rabbit trails to follow with this. And so you have Jillian Keenan, who looked at the whole battle with same-sex marriage and said, all right, we need to win that battle. We also need to carry the battle on and get polygamy legalized in Canada. Well, the courts eventually shot it down. Here's what's interesting. They shot it down, and the judges who were part of the ruling leaned heavily on the research of a guy named Heinrich. And so, again, go to the article. It'll link you to his research. And his argument is this, that monogamous marriage may be one of those things that contributed to the success of Western civilization. So to put it more strong, it's because of monogamous marriage and fidelity that Western civ and other factors was able to dominate as it did in the world. And so for me, there was a disconnect. So I called you last Wednesday night, and we talked for a while on this, because for us, we love Rodney Stark's research in his book, The Rise of Christianity. And my point is this. I'd love to have Heinrich to look at his research, because as I understand the research of Rodney Stark's, is this whole emphasis of monogamous relationship isn't within the Roman world empire. It comes as a result of the influence of Christianity.
Right.
And his whole book, The Rise of Christianity, is exactly that. It is Christianity that brings fidelity to marriage and speaks against polygamy. It is Christianity that says infanticide is wrong. It is Christianity that says abortion is wrong. It is Christianity that says, there was one other thing here. In terms of the poor and how they're to be treated, and the widow, the value of females. I mean, it's Christianity that does this. And so I find it interesting that you have the courts who are looking at Heinrich's research, and my whole reaction to it is, but his research isn't the whole story.
Right.
Now, let me hasten to interject something here, and that is that it didn't happen overnight. The transformation of values didn't take place overnight, but in little groups like this, like what's happening right here and with our listeners of this show, gradually the discussion moved along. What are the implications of how Christ lived? Yeah. His teaching that there is no greater love than that you lay down your life for your friends. What is that? How did he exemplify the Father's love to us? How should we then love, since he's commanded us to love as I have loved you? How should we then love, and how should we then live? And it was out of these discussions that you have the gradual elevation of some things came almost immediately. One of the things that Stark and others point to is that baby girls were not wanted in Rome. So they were taken down to the dump, what we would call the dump, and they were left to die, wild animals, or just perish from exposure. And the Christians, learning of this, began to go down every evening and listen for the cry of infants and follow the cries until they found the little one, take it home and raise it. Fast forward 20 years. Now that the wealthy sons of the wealthy homes of the aristocracy who put their baby girls in the dump, the sons are now of marriageable age. Where are they going to get their wives? The same thing's happening in China with its one-child policy. Where are they going to get their wives? And you guessed it. They married into families by virtue of marrying these girls that were foundlings, who were raised with Christ as the center of their life, who knew that the reason why they were alive was the message of the cross. They married them. And St. Augustine's family life was very much shaped by a similar construct, where his mother was a Christian, his father was not. And it was through her devotion to Christ that ultimately he came into the experience of grace.
Again, talking about his book, another thing he notes is that the way human sexuality happened within many of these homes, there was a bifurcation within sex itself. And so my wife, she is the one that I have sex with to have children. But then I'll go down to the bathhouse for erotic sex and this stuff on the sideline. And Christianity comes in and says, no, you're not going to do that. That it's a misuse of your wife. It's a gross misunderstanding of sexuality. And so again, when you get back to Heinrich, let me say this: I appreciate Heinrich's research, and it swayed the courts in Canada. So I applaud his research. I'm just saying that there's also something behind his research.
Talking about the gradual influence of the church, because in our day we seem to want an instantaneous turnaround. Who can build the church of 20,000 in the shortest amount of time? And the kingdom of God has moved most often, like a mighty army on a long march. We're in it for the long haul. So you're right that in Rome, those relationships are transformed so that husbands begin to deal with real love towards their mate.
Right.
But C.S. Lewis documents that it wasn't until the Middle Ages, as the gospel message began to permeate the culture, in his book An Allegory of Love, that the same thing begins to take place across Europe and in what is today Great Britain. That up until then, courtly love, this having a lover on the side, that it was as impolite to talk about desiring your wife in a romantic way as it is now considered, or has been considered, impolite to talk about desiring someone other than your wife.
Yeah.
But it was the gospel that changed
That influenced that.
Yeah. I wonder, this is a story from Canada. Obviously, the legalization of same-sex marriage is, right now a hot topic in our country. Do you guys think that if that passes in our country, whether in the states or by via the Supreme Court, do you think that there's going to be somebody out there that immediately puts in to legalize polygamy?
Well, Tony prophesied this a long time ago. I have to give him props for that. And my point in sending him the article wasn't to get into all this great stuff.
Right.
I just said at the top, you were right.
Yeah.
You were right.
Yeah.
Because someone's going to make that argument.
Yeah.
Here's why. If you lay aside the biblical definition, the definition of marriage informed by Christian teaching, Judeo-Christian teaching, what are you going to use in its place as the definition determiner of marriage? And the answer is, well, nothing that looks like marriage today, because other cultures without this light have gone in far, far different directions. So I think we're going to encounter a lot of change.
Yeah, if we obliterate the rules, who then will redraw them?
I didn't realize that Tony had prophesied about polygamy and that he is the angel Moroni.
He did.
Did not know.
One day he ought to tell that
Did
story.
not know Tony was the angel
He
Moroni.
was talking with someone.
Well, I've told it on this show, but basically it was someone that was just in favor of rewriting marriage, and my comment at the end of it was, if we obliterate the lines, who then will redraw them? And so this was coming out of seminary and the stuff that I was reading. I'm not surprised by where we are in the culture today at all, because you could see it coming. And my fear was that we are going to redefine a whole lot of things, so that now we're seeing things that we wouldn't have, that people 20 years ago told me I was crazy. Like, oh, you are being nuts, Tony. You're being dramatic. But one of the things I said is we're going to see a push to see pedophilia legitimized.
Yeah.
And we are seeing that now among psychologists.
Right. Yeah.
That not legitimized, I want to use their phrase, that we need to have sympathy towards the pedophile.
Right.
But here's the opportunity for the church. As you follow the world's direction and its philosophy, the catastrophes that will result from it will be easy for us to point to and say, that is the consequence of this. The other kind of society, with its flaws, with its still very human face, was a consequence of following God's way. He says that the wicked should be turned into hell, and all nations that forget God. I think it's true that nations become hellish when they forget God. Righteousness exalts a nation. Sin is a reproach to any people, and it will become a burden to us. Listen to this. I defy anyone to spend a little bit of time looking at the amount of money that is spent across America in lotteries and state-sponsored gambling.
Yeah.
And tell me how different our economy would be if instead of buying paper and sending the money to Washington, we were using the same amount of money to buy boots and shoes and cars and equipment. How many jobs would be created by people having to return to work and manufacture these things?
Yeah.
But instead, it's all gone down a rabbit hole. And we've learned this lesson before. In the early 1800s, late 1700s, lotteries were popular across the South. There came a time when Louisiana got rid of it because of the social devastation they recognized it was wreaking on the culture. So I think, like I say, this is an opportunity for the church. We just keep being Christian.
Right.
We keep reaching out with the arms of love, not judgmentally, but but with grace and love and invitation, and let our homes, let our communities reflect the values.
Well, we need to wrap it up. It's
so much
1
more to talk
o'clock
about.
here. So this was classic Steve here.
Oh, yeah, man.
Yeah, man, I miss
You
having
mean
you on every week.
hogging the show? So it's
No,
not at
man,
all.
good.
Not at all. Let's talk a little bit about the future. We have Keith Loy, who's coming up next week, and
Actually, if you want to go back to Technology Show history, the first on-the-ground camera interview we ever did was with Keith Loy. Do you remember that?
And we probably should
Gathering.
thank Wesleyan Investment Foundation because they kind of sponsored the night that Keith Loy was coming, and we went to their booth and got an
we did.
interview
We
with
were
him.
like, we're stepping in and going to talk to this guy. And they were like, what are you doing? Who are you people?
Robert Morlock said, now, who are you? What are you guys? And I explained, and they were, okay, all right.
But yeah.
And they were cool with it. So, yeah, Keith Loy, just a wonderful, wonderful ministry, and it's going to be a neat guy to have. He's the author of several books, but have him on because of just the great ministry.
If
that
you want a
he's
heads
involved.
up, go listen to our interview with Corey Pence. Keith Loy and his church came up during that interview and
Right.
some of the ministries that they do.
Yeah. May 14th, we'll have Dr. Bud Bentz on the show. He is, quote, a retired professor at IWU, but he's teaching right now and couldn't be on this semester.
Yeah.
So we're just waiting for him to get done with this semester. But again, just a wonderful servant of the Lord. I don't know how many years he's had been teaching at Indiana Wesleyan, probably 30 years.
We had an interview with him at the General Conference.
All right. And then I tell you, an interview I'm very excited about is Dr. Rosaria Butterfield. This is an interview I've been talking about. It comes out of her book. Wow, it just left me. Anyway, Dr. Butterfield was a professor at Syracuse University. She's in charge of feminist studies there, was in a lesbian relationship, and her book is really her testimony of what happened to her as a result of one letter that was sent by a Presbyterian pastor. And so she's going to share that with us and just talk to us about how the church can be compassionate and reaching out to those who are unlike ourselves.
Secret thoughts of an unlikely convert.
Thank you very much, Master TG.
Thank Google, too.
All right. So, Steve, thanks for being in studio today.
It was a privilege.
Yeah.
Thank you. I miss these times.
Yeah, and Steve will be back. He fills in at times when Heath's out of town, and if it works out for his schedule, he fills in, and we appreciate that. Where can our listeners find you on the internet?
Well, really on Google Plus, they can find me.
All right.
Pastor SES at gmail.com.
Heath?
HeathMulligan.com. Some new things in the works there. I am the Heath Mulligan, so Twitter, Facebook, find me. So
I think really there's only one "the," and that's the Matthew.
That's
TG.
right.
Yeah. You can find me at MatthewTG.com. There's my lower third that I never get to use. Woo!
All right. And then you can find me at AKC64 on Twitter or at Facebook.
Or on Leviticus 13:41.
So special thanks to Steven Sheets, who helped us out at General Conference in that video clip. And if maybe Steven could give us complimentary watches that we could give out exactly like the watch that he was using at General
Speaking of
Conference.
giveaways, you got a couple
Yes.
coming up. We're giving away a couple books between now and our next week, just to celebrate our birthday, give you a present or two.
Yep.
So
one of those books is Eric Metaxas' book, Bonhoeffer's biography. And then also we have one of these in studio. Let me see if I can reach over here and grab it. We have this book here, Pop Goes to Church by Tim Stevens.
it's a good book and a good interview with Tim. that
Yeah,
you got.
and he was gracious enough to give us a few copies.
Yeah, absolutely, man. He
Every
was
so often
awesome.
we give it away. So next week we have 2 giveaways. We're going to set this up, and I
And what do we do? Let our first winner choose the book that they want, and then
wonder if we should do it that way. Let's do
let's do that. 2 books, and
Right.
whoever the first winner is, you get the choice.
Yep.
And then the second person gets the leftovers.
Sounds very good. Listen, if you want to do further research on anything we discussed today, you can find all the stories we talked about. We link them to you at our website, thetechnologyshow.com. If you want to contact us, send your emails to thetechnologyshow@gmail.com. Or better yet, to leave us a voicemail by calling us at 3049 Theology. That's 304-986-5649. Leave us a message. We may even play your comments on the air. Thank you for joining us for this special 200th episode of the Technology Show.
Hey, and to play us out,
Goodbye,
I got
everyone.
something for you. Here we go.
He's got something for us.
Adios.
Hey, it's Heath Mulligan from the Technology Show, and I am here in the office of our General Superintendent of the Wesleyan Church, Dr. Joanne Lyon, and she has a message for our
And I
viewers.
have a great message. Technology Show is the best show in the country. And guess what? They're soon going to have their 200th show. Everybody, tune in.
I can't wait to watch it.
TheTechnologyShow.com.